to the Gospel According to Marvel. I'm Derek Weston.
And I'm Zane Sanders.
And we're here to talk about a little Marvel stuff for you. And today we're going to be looking at Iron Man 3. And we're going to, Zane and I think are coming at Iron Man 3 from maybe a little bit different perspectives, but that'll be fun stuff to talk about. So before we jump into Iron Man 3, Zane, I've got a bone to pick with you, sir. You released your list of your rankings of the Marvel films, and I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at your list, and so let me. So Zane, we'll actually put a link in the show description to your list. And now the other reason I have a bone to pick with you is now I'm feeling extra pressure to get my list out. That's the big thing, is like now the heat is on. So looking over your list, there's some very interesting placements here. Today's movie. So first off, I mean, just looking at this list, like there's 15 movies on this list, which is awesome. Marvel.
I was counting to make sure I had them all.
Yeah.
There's so many movies.
There's so many movies. This has been so great. You have, so in your number 15 spot is a movie that we have not yet discussed, which is Thor: The Dark World, and so that's your bottom rung of the ladder.
For now.
Hopefully
that's the worst that comes.
So. Yeah, and so is that, remind me, in your first version of the list, has it stayed constant? And so, okay, so that's the bottom of your list. One of my surprises is you have Captain America: The First Avenger at 13. Man!
Let me clarify. I didn't say for Thor: The Dark World that, don't read this out of 1 out of 10 stars, because it's still enjoyable movie.
Yeah.
But out of all 15, that was, I felt, the worst told story, I guess.
And I would clarify also that and we've said this before, none of these movies are bad.
Right.
And that's the thing that, as I continue to be amazed by Marvel's, none of these movies are bad. But, so Thor: The Dark World is your, but again, Captain America: First Avenger. And I love your very first line is, my wife saw where I put this in the order, gasped, and then said something along the lines of, you disgust me.
Yeah. That may have been a direct quote. It was a good movie. And again, I love Chris Evans in this role. For me, I'm just not really big into war movies. And this really felt like
a lot of it is
an old-fashioned war movie.
Yeah.
And I kind of got bored throughout it. And even the ending with Red Skull's disappearance, and I was really hoping for more of an epic battle.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen as much. And what's really cool is the way I have Skype set up. I can see you. Your head is on top of Captain America's body.
Awesome.
On the article. So maybe I'll just bump this one up. Switch it to 12. Just for that reason.
I love it. Let's see what other. So today's movie, Iron Man 3, you have at 10, which. Well,
it's still in the lower half.
It's still in the lower half. We'll talk about that. So let's see. You got and interesting to me is that you have quite a few of the newer movies in the top half of your list, which I think is really a testament to the fact that. Marvel's really finding their footing and really, I think they've always had a good plan, but I think they're not dropping off. They're not going anywhere. And they
I think the thing that's really impressed me the most about some of these newer things, especially Captain America, Civil War, Age of Ultron, like they have so much to continue to tell for each character in these storylines, and like they do it well, and it doesn't seem like it's too terribly much all the time. There was points in Age of Ultron where like I wish there would have been more focus on Ultron himself, maybe some of the other people's storylines, but I feel like they really give every character a good chunk of the story, and that's hard to do. So.
So I'm looking at your list, and man, I am feeling the pressure. I am feeling the pressure right now. So I will try and get my list up in the next week, and we'll look at them side by side. But it's a great list, just to run through, because I do, obviously there's no wrong answers here, but you have Captain America, Winter Soldier at 1. Civil War at 2, Guardians of the Galaxy at 3, Avengers at 4, Age of Ultron at 5, Iron Man at 6, Ant-Man at 7, Doctor Strange at 8, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 at 9, Iron Man 3 at 10, Thor at 11, Iron Man 2 at 12, Captain America at 13, Incredible Hulk at 14, and then Thor: The Dark World. And again, like there's no wrong order here, but
I'm sure I'll be told that I was.
But wrong. I'm sure you'll be told that you're wrong by others and by me. So just one. I mean, the pretty much the big Marvel news of since the last time we talked has been the release of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which you have at number 9. What were your thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2?
I thought it was great. I mean, the first Guardians is in my top 3, and like I still go back to that movie and love it. I think Marvel did something with that that maybe was unexpected because it was a new team and they just kind of thrust it upon us. They didn't build it up like they did for the Avengers, and so like it was still a success in that sense. And so anyway, Volume 2 it was just really a good continuation of this story. And I need to apologize, my kids are watching Little Einsteins and I keep hearing their music, so if you hear that in the background, I apologize. Anyway, Volume 2, it was continued. They did well with character development. I thought the villain was fantastic. I don't want to spoil anything for anybody, but the villain was really great, and even the way they continued to build the universe beyond that team and beyond, pointing towards Infinity War more, but not in a forceful way. Which I think was Thor: The Dark World's biggest downfall, is that they were like, "Hey, look, Infinity War's coming."
and like pretty early, like too early,
right?
For the fact that Infinity War was still years and years away.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the thing for me about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is that there was no way they could. Guardians of the Galaxy had a novelty to it that, like, there was no way they were going to be able to replicate that. Like, because, I mean, we were just, Guardians of the Galaxy we'll get to soon, but Guardians of the Galaxy, I think, really caught a lot of people off guard. Brand new characters that people weren't very familiar with. They threw this team together in this incredibly fun, engaging way where it didn't feel like any of the characters got short shrift. It wasn't like Avengers where they all had their solo outings and then they were coming together. They just brought the team together. It was fast-paced, it was fun, it was funny. There was no way to capture the novelty of the first one again. That said, I loved Volume 2. It was very funny. It's a very fun movie. I was worried that they were going to overdo the Baby Groot stuff. I felt like Baby Groot was used perfectly. Yeah. And glad also to see small, mild spoiler that the Baby Groot thing is not going to continue. Right. It was just enough Baby Groot. And this, I think, and again, not to don't want to get into spoiler territory here, but like this might be the strongest villain. Like Marvel has the big criticism of the MCU has been the villains. This might be one of their strongest villains of the MCU. And the additions cast-wise of Kurt Russell was great. Sylvester Stallone was really surprising, and it sounds like they're going to be doing more with him going forward.
It'll be cool to see how they tie him in more.
Yeah. And even Aisha, that race of they weren't really fleshed out, but it shows that there's more coming with them.
Right.
I loved it. I thought it was great. I'm not sure that I would. I'm still doing the which one's better one. I think I still give the edge to Volume 1, but it's tough. It's tough. I think they're both. The thing about it is they're just such fun movies. I mean, like if I was ranking them just on fun, Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2 would be at the top of the list.
Absolutely.
They're just fun movies, and I love James Gunn's kind of vision for how these characters were fleshed out, and in an age where comic book movies are being, we're really trying to push things darker and darker, like Logan and Deadpool. I mean, man, just to have a pure, not pure, but really fun movie. That's bright and colorful and incredibly visually bright and colorful and light. And honestly, I was also surprised. Again, spoiler free. I was really surprised by the emotion at the end. That they really did do some emotional things very well. Thumbs up. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Marvel continues to just crank out quality films. So
yep.
Yeah.
I wanted to point out, I don't know if everyone knew this, but Miley Cyrus actually was in this movie.
I did not know that, and you just ruined it for me.
In the end, with Sylvester Stallone and all the Ravagers that are there, there was the computer. So Miley Cyrus plays the voice of Mainframe, which is the character, that computer. So there may be more of that in the future.
Oh, because you know what? That is the one thing that the MCU was missing was the inclusion of Miley Cyrus.
Oh, man.
So let's jump into Iron Man 3. Iron Man 3. So let's first talk about the fact that Iron Man 3 is we've now ended Phase 1 of the MCU, and we're going into Phase 2. And in some ways, Iron Man 3 is the perfect kickoff to Phase 2 because it really is it's kind of the direct follower, the direct successor of the Avengers, and it's dealing with the immediate fallout of the Avengers. So, Iron Man 3, did you see it in the theater?
Yes.
Yes.
I remember going to see it and just, like, at the time I was kind of like, oh, this is a little disappointing because it didn't do exactly what I was hoping it would do. But then after rewatching it later, because I don't think when I saw it, my wife was able to go with me, so like we rented it from Redbox, and after watching it with her, I was kind of like, this movie was a lot better than I remember.
Yeah.
I think just the excitement of all the Iron Man suits, and like the Extremis storyline, I thought was going to be much harder to put into film narrative, but they did a really great job with that part of it. So yeah, I sort of had a change of heart throughout my watchings, and then this time around, again, it was just kind of like, yeah, this was a fun film, and it's not giving us a reworking of the same kind of villain that's recreating Tony Stark's technology. It's a different thing. So
yeah. So I didn't see it in the theater, and man, I do have to like, as I've been going through this process with you as we've been doing the podcast, I do have to say that like theater experience really weighs heavily on my rating of movies. So yeah, the first time I saw it was at home I got it off Redbox, and didn't love it the first time I watched it. Really was kind of like, man, this is a dud. And at the time I was like, man, this is Marvel's first dud. Watched it again, was like, okay, I was a little harsh. Watching it again, the first two acts of the movie for me are very strong. Actually, as I rewatched it this last time, the first two acts actually they're funny, they're fun. Tony is good old Tony, and yet he's got this new layer to him of really dealing with the fallout of the Avengers events and the New York event, which this kind of the New York event kind of rings throughout the MCU to this day.
Right.
That like,
or even into the Netflix series,
exactly.
And like everything, it's kind of like that was the pivotal moment for change.
Yeah, and it kind of is the marker from which Phase 2 and Phase 3 really become differentiated from the first handful of films. Man, the third act of this movie kills me. And like, man, I struggle so hard with the third act of this movie.
Starting where? Where do you see that starting?
Oh man, when Tony comes in and pulls the cover off of the bed, and there's the two women in the bed, and then Trevor Slattery comes out of the bathroom. He's like, no one go in there for 20 minutes. And it's like, what? And like, props to Ben Kingsley, who is a phenomenal actor. I mean, like, Ben Kingsley is Ben Kingsley. He's Sir Ben Kingsley. He's a phenomenal actor. And given what he was to work with, he did an amazing job. Both with the first part of the film where he's in character as the Mandarin, and even as Trevor Slattery, his acting is phenomenal. But and I'm not even like I'm not even a hardcore comic book fan. But for them to take away the character of the Mandarin and to put him in, and to say the Mandarin was this projection of Aldrich Killian, and having this actor who was like strung out on drugs play him, and to just kind of like destroy the mystique of this character who in the comic books is one of Iron Man's big nemesis, right? Like Mandarin's a big foil for Iron Man in the comics. To have that just kind of destroyed in some ways. Now, I will say that, like, I know the one-shots out there, and it's called, it's Hail to the King or something like that?
Yeah, Hail to the King.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll get, I do hope at some point we'll get around to talking about the one-shots, because they are a lot of fun. And that one's probably my favorite of the one-shots. But, you know, so they do kind of leave the door open for us to get the real Mandarin at some point.
Right.
But, man,
I'm so curious because they have this planned out very far.
Yeah.
I don't think that one shot was like, oh, people are mad, so we're going to make them happy. I think there is a plan.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right, because I have a little bit of a feeling that was like, people are mad, and we need to cover our butts. I hope you're right. I really do hope that they have a plan, and that we'll get an Iron Man 4 where we have the Mandarin, or something where we have the actual Mandarin, and I really hope you're right. I really do. Because it takes me out of it. So I'll just kind of jump into my other critique, because both the Mandarin and AIM are like, again, from the comics, they are big foils for Tony and for the whole of the Marvel Universe. And I'm also hoping that in the future that they do more with AIM, because I feel like they just kind of threw the name in there and then kind of didn't set up AIM as a big. I mean, it kind of feels like at the end of the movie that AIM is kind of done, and that would be a real letdown, because I feel like, again, these are. And you know, like, as someone, like, I don't even have that much history with the comics, but it still feels like, but even not having that much history with the comics, I know AIM, and I know the Mandarin, and I know they're supposed to be bigger,
yeah,
and more important.
That's a fair point.
So, that's me.
Yeah.
That's Derek on Iron Man 3.
Well, should we go through the movie?
Yeah, let's go for it. Now, where do you want to start?
First of all, I felt like the themes that were really coming out were sort of past mistakes catching up to us.
Yeah.
And tied to that is finding our true selves and who we really are.
Yeah.
In that, and then being our own worst enemies. Because I feel like for both Tony and Maya, that's sort of what happened, that they became their worst enemies as they were trying to become the best there was. So.
Yeah, and it starts with, you know, in beautiful Tony Stark fashion, you know, we create our own demons. Some famous man said we create our own demons, and I don't know which famous guy, but now two well-known guys have said it. And that does become... and not only, again, you know, one of the things that I will give the MCU and give Marvel credit for is that this is a beginning of a turning point for Tony. That he is now in the cycle of creating his own demons. That is kind of starting with this film. We begin to see this pattern of creating demons that not only does he have to contend with, but that he and his colleagues have to contend with.
Yeah, which makes his position in Civil War makes so much more sense.
Absolutely.
After seeing these. Yeah.
Absolutely, and they are building this so well that this is really the beginning of a pretty significant shift in attitude and in operating for Tony.
Yeah.
And I love the piece that you said about identity, because Tony seems to really be struggling with his identity in this movie.
Right.
What were kind of the identity issues that rung out for you? How did you see that portrayed in the movie?
Well, for him, another part of this is that it's really the first look in any Marvel movie about anxiety or PTSD.
Yeah.
And so I think that is actually playing a big role in, it's sort of the igniter to his search for identity.
Yeah.
Because he felt like he had it all together before, and he always kind of does feel like he has it all together when he's around other people. But then there's, after the New York incident and the Avengers, he goes into this phase of not being able to sleep, of building millions of Iron Man outfits. I don't know how many of those.
Yeah.
But so like he's trying to figure out himself, his role as Iron Man, and really his place in the universe.
Yeah.
And so I think it's all of those big questions that are seen speckled throughout the entire film.
Yeah.
There wasn't one specific thing that jumped out to me as much as, like, I mean, that's really what this movie's about. Tony Stark finding out who he is as a person, and as Iron Man too. And,
yeah. I think there's you just said a whole lot of amazing things. I think there's a couple pieces. One is that there are times when for the first time we see him like not in the suit. Like the first, like Pepper comes home and she thinks she's talking to him, but she's talking to the suit. And Tony seems to have this like losing himself in the suit, and doesn't seem to know where the line where Tony Stark ends and Iron Man begins. At one point, he in talking about Iron Man, he says, "Well, technically, I am." He was talking about Iron Man, and he's really kind of merging his identity with Iron Man's in ways that that feel unhealthy and feel really like kind of self-destructive. That like he's really wrestling, and I love what you said about he is wrestling with his place in the universe, and like literally the universe, because he's talking about he's talking to Pepper, and he's like, there's gods and there's aliens, and then there's me, this guy in a can. He is like feeling very small and insignificant. And he's trying to figure out, how does he have purpose in this world that he got exposed to when he went through that wormhole. And he's, I think the interesting thing is that Iron Man has to deal with identity issues in a way that no other character, with the exception of maybe Bruce Banner, has to deal with. Because Captain America is Captain America. Like he's Steve Rogers, he's Captain America. Like he just is. Thor is Thor, right? And Black Widow and Hawkeye are themselves, and he really has. He and Bruce Banner are the only ones who really have like conflicting identities.
Yeah.
Of where,
or even two separate identities.
Yeah.
That have to coexist.
Yeah. I mean, he's trying to. So you've got kid in the background listening to Little Einstein. I have dog in the background who decided now to find her squeaky bone. So, so forgive that as well. seriously, like right now is the time that you decide to do that. Yeah, he is, and he's really wrestling with this. He's really wrestling with this. Who am I? And it's interesting, like throughout the when he has his first encounter with Maya in 1999, he writes on the name tag, kind of like as he's leaving her the morning after, something like "You know who I am." Like, and again, like this is the whole. I was thinking about the I am statements of Exodus and of the Gospel of John, God's identity being questioned and Jesus' identity being questioned, and Tony's really wrestling with the ideas of identity. He's really struggling with identity, and he's lost in it. He's really lost and he's really conflicted, and he doesn't know what it means to be Iron Man in a world where aliens can invade. He doesn't know what it means to be Iron Man in a world where Asgard is out there, and he feels small and insignificant, and so his only recourse is to, Pepper comes in and says, "Oh, what is this Mark 15 of the suits?" And he's like, "Yeah, something like that."
Something like that.
And we see the close up of it's Mark 43, and
42,
42, and he's just tinkering and rebuilding, and he's obsessed with it.
Yeah, I do have to say they keep like upping the ante on introducing these suits. And the way they introduced the Mark 42 with him jumping around and having the pieces fly at him, and that was so cool.
And it's and again,
good way to start the movie.
And it's so entertaining. I mean, because he's dancing and he's cocky but he's also sleep deprived, and he's getting hit by pieces of the armor, just in a very and again. Robert Downey Jr. continues to just completely embody this character and play him in such fun ways.
Yeah.
Because you brought it up, I did want to jump into this because a struggle that I had with this movie that I didn't. I guess maybe because I'm dealing with it more, and I wanted to talk about this. So Tony is clearly dealing with PTSD, and he's having anxiety attacks. And I kind of thought about, for the first time, the way that, we talk about mental illness. And the Tony is asked by the boy, blanking on his name. The boy is named.
I'm not remembering either.
Anyway, the boy that Tony. Well, I'll dig it up here. He asked him, like, "Are you on medication?" And he's like, "Yeah, I probably should be." And again, I think, we can, as someone who is on, I'm on medication for depression, and I think mental illness, in some ways, this is actually a really great representation of mental illness, in that Harley is the kid's name, I think, yeah, Harley is the kid's name,
Harley Keener.
Yeah, Harley Keener, there we go. He's, because we see that Tony's experience of PTSD, Tony's experience of anxiety, is actually having a profound impact on his ability to have relationships, on his ability to function in the world, on his ability to do his work. quote unquote. You know, I don't know that, you know, being Iron Man is a day job, so to speak. But he's being deeply impacted by having had this traumatic experience.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know. Did you? It's probably something, because I said, like, you know, I talk openly about being in therapy, and I talk openly about, you know, how you know, I've been more aware in recent years of my own dealings with depression and anxiety. So probably something that I'm more hyper aware of. I'm wondering if that's something that you mentioned it a little bit, but I'm wondering if that's something that you paid any attention to as you were watching the film.
Even the first time I watched it, I was pretty aware of it, just because at the time I was doing college ministry, and we have had students in our ministry that were struggling with anxiety and depression. And so it's one of those things that, because I don't think I struggle with that, I wasn't sure how accurate his depiction of it was, but then again, I think it's different for everybody, so that's maybe unfair to judge too on his acting. But
sure.
So I was happy to see that they were introducing that and making that a part of it. I was hoping you would talk more about it, just because I don't feel like I'm sort of a fish out of water when it comes to this. But I was happy, like I said, happy to see that they addressed it and didn't try to, like, sugarcoat it necessarily.
Yeah, and you know, I think the what I appreciate is that they even for they do take it seriously. Like, I mean, it really is something that, in a lot of ways, Tony's future actions, Tony's actions in this film, and Tony's future actions in the MCU are being, to a large extent, dictated by a trauma. He went through a trauma when he went through that wormhole and when he crashed back down to Earth. And I think that's, you know, I think, you know, they actually do, you know, there's, again, different people respond to anxiety, depression, PTSD in different ways, but I actually do think that they handled it pretty well. I actually think that, again, part of what's really, again, the first two acts of the movie are really good, because part of what we see is that his dealing with the trauma puts incredible stress on his relationships. It alienates him from Pepper. It alienates him from Happy. He's kind of a jerk to Rhodes, but he's always a jerk to Rhodes, and that's kind of a constant. But I think that I actually feel like they do a good job of demonstrating how it can be really debilitating, and I do think that they you know, they do a good job of showing Tony's loneliness and the ways that people who are dealing with mental illness really do tend to isolate themselves and alienate themselves. And I think that's, whether intentionally or unintentionally, really kind of put themselves in a box where they're away from other people. And I think that's exactly what's happening with Tony. And it's become really... because, I mean, again, we see in the future actions that he's really trying to handle all of the world's problems by himself, despite the fact that he has the resources of the world and friends and comrades who really want to help him and be there for him. And that's actually, you know, I will kind of say this. That's actually one of one of my quote unquote issues with a lot of the solo movies after the Avengers is like, dude, why don't you just call Captain America?
well, I even wrote down my notes. I said, why doesn't Tony call the Avengers House Party Protocol? That's why. Because he really can sort of handle it by himself.
Yeah, exactly.
Another thing to think about is this whole movie is in the background of that end credit scene where he's actually telling this whole thing to Bruce Banner.
Yeah.
As sort of like a therapy session to sort of work through it. And I think it's funny and fun to see that little scene, but I think it's meaningful that we see them together and that Tony is trying to work through this with a close friend. So that was cool to see.
Well, and I think that actually is one of my favorite MCU post-credit scenes. I mean, because I actually, for some reason or another, I didn't know what the scene was, even though my first time seeing it was on DVD, and so it's very funny, but it also does establish that Banner and Stark have a friendship, have a real he's trying to have a friend, and he's trying to work through stuff, and he's trying to work through stuff with, again, the only other character who might have the same kind of identity issues that he has. The only other character who might have the sense of I am split, I am, and might have actually more profound identity issues than he does. Of course, Bruce Banner's response of I'm not that kind of doctor is really funny, and also his sleeping through Tony's story, which again, my first time watching, I found incredibly hysterical because my first time watching, I found a lot of the parts in Tennessee to be really boring. So I was like, oh, you fell asleep during this too. But on rewatching, I do appreciate the value of it much more.
It's something that stood out to me in thinking about how this is the first threequel for Solo Avenger. So this and then Captain America Civil War is obviously Captain America's, and then Thor Ragnarok will be his. I think it's interesting that they all three sort of have that element of not necessarily a road trip buddy movie, but each of them is trying to get through something with someone.
Yeah.
And then all three of them are also losing, in a sense, their signature item. Their either the suit, the arc reactor that he loses at the end, or really figuring out who he is, or Captain America's shield at the end of Civil War, and in the Thor Ragnarok trailer we saw how he loses his hammer.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to me that all three of these threequels are sort of following a similar pattern for these heroes. Obviously, they're very different in various ways, but...
And I have to say, again, we're kind of projecting based off of what we know. Right. I was also thinking about the Spider-Man Homecoming trailer as I watched Iron Man 3.
Mm-hmm.
I
have that in my notes as well.
Yeah, that great minds. That when he steps out in the trailer, he kind of says to Peter Parker, if you need the suit, then you shouldn't be doing the job. And I'm like, man, that's so interesting. In light of Iron Man 3, to have Tony saying that to Peter, because there's a piece to the third act of Tony kind of going in to find the Mandarin sans Iron Man suit of I'm going to do this anyway, which kind of again looks a little bit like what we're seeing in the trailer for Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really interesting because again we're seeing these identity pieces be a big part of who Tony is.
Yeah. Although I will say my biggest complaint about this movie is that at the end, like, Tony's just, okay, let's remove the shrapnel and not worry about this.
Yeah. Like, really?
Like, that was...
Is that easy?
Super simple. Earlier.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I was actually angry.
Yeah.
More angry than about the whole Mandarin.
Yeah, it does kind of feel like, yeah, I can just take the shrapnel out. It's like, what? And actually, I that was another piece that upset me because I always felt like that aspect of Tony, that the reactor was keeping the shrapnel away from his heart, I actually thought that was a really important character piece.
Mm-hmm.
And for that to just be like, meh, I can solve that.
Yeah.
It was kind of weak sauce.
It is sort of symbolic in the sense that, okay, he knows who he is now.
Yeah.
And then his next step in all of this is with Bruce Banner trying to figure out the whole Ultron thing.
Sure.
Because after he blows up all his suits, most of his suits, he builds those, like the robotics for
the
peacekeeping.
The Iron Sentinels.
Yeah.
Iron Sentinels.
So I guess it is sort of symbolic in that, but it was disappointing.
It's also kind of cheap.
Yeah.
So, question for you that I don't have an answer for, but and so maybe we can brainstorm this together. What's the significance of this movie taking place at Christmas time? I'm really struggling with that. Like, because it's kind of a cheap sentimental device to have movies set in Christmas. And I don't want to throw that at Marvel. I'm wondering, was there more purpose behind it than just kind of the cheap sentimental device of I think part of it as I'm thinking through it is like for many people, the holidays is a time where feelings of loneliness are amplified, and so to have Tony again kind of alienated from a lot of his support structure, and to have that happen during Christmas, maybe that plays into it. That the holidays are sometimes really dark for people. But did you think about that at all? I mean, I just was kind of like I didn't have any real answers for that.
It didn't really occur to me.
Yeah, I'm struggling.
No, it does sort of give off kind of a feel of, I'm trying to think like that Christmas classic movie, It's a Wonderful Life. Sort of gives off that sort of feel to it. A little bit. But
that's
again, this is the first time I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
So
That's good. That's good. I can see that. Like, because It's a Wonderful Life is certainly a movie about like identity and worth and like the value of one man in the larger world. I can roll with that. That works for me. I like it. Okay, way to solve that one for me, Zane. Thank you. I appreciate that. I like it. Okay, all right.
At the end of the movie, he says, "Now I'm a changed man." And in my head, I was thinking, yeah, that's going to build more AI suits that will take over the world, proving that ultimately you're still mostly the same. But for now, yes, you're a changed man. Way to go.
And isn't that like, I mean, you know, that's kind of human nature. That kind of the kind of self-delusional, like, I'm all better. You know, I kind of I kind of talk about, you know, I think lots of times people in our faith talk about the idea of like having this moment where you give your life to Christ, and that's that one time event, and yet I've kind of found in my life that like really what I need to do is kind of a daily giving of my life to Christ. I need to do like a daily giving of myself to God, or else I'm very likely to fall back into my same patterns and repeat my same mistakes, and once again start creating my own demons.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is interesting at this point to say I'm a changed man, and for him to say it, you know, kind of in his cool Tony Stark nonchalant kind of way of like, clearly I've done some self-reflection. And it's like, dude, this is the first time you've ever done self-reflection in your life. This is the first time you've ever been reflective. And
isn't that how we always feel after doing a little self-reflection? We're like, I am such a better person.
Look how awesome I am because I did a little bit of work on myself. Yeah, and that's kind of how this strikes me, is that, and again, it wraps up the movie really well, and it wraps up his telling the story to Bruce Banner really well, but it doesn't wrap up the story of Tony Stark in any stretch of the imagination.
And I think connecting this to our faith, to our lives, Jesus talks about remaining. He says, "Remain in me, and I will remain in you." And so, like you said, that sort of daily reconnection into who it is that we have been made to be is really important. And that obviously looks different for everybody. There's no right way to do that, but doing it, remembering that He is the vine and we are the branches, through that section in John that he talks about. So
and how easy it is. One of the there's a great line here that I wrote down, and I think it connects. Maya is talking to Pepper, and she's talking about a German scientist who was developing missiles for the Nazis, which again is an interesting tie into the MCU. And the quote from the scientist was, "The rocket performed admirably. It just landed on the wrong planet," because he had been wanting to do rocket. You know, he wanted to be involved in the space program, but he ends up designing rockets for the Nazis. And she goes on to say, "We start admirably, then ego steps in," and that's her journey. And that's also Tony's journey of, like, you know, she starts out as a botanist, and she ends up as kind of the pawn of AIM and Aldrich Killian.
Right.
She started with admirable goals of, like, we can regrow limbs, we can rewire the neurosystem to do like great things for the body, and you know, Pepper, you know, as soon as she gets the presentation from Aldrich Killian, says, "Yeah, that sounds like something that can be weaponized," and she had that forethought. But you know, Maya is again very much like Tony, in that, you know, she started with something, and sort of the journey of Tony is like he starts with this thing as Iron Man that then kind of turns into what we're going to see in Ultron and what we're going to see in Civil War, because ego steps in. And I think that's the place where, staying connected to the vine is one of the ways that we combat our ego. It's one of the ways that we really fight back and say, there's something bigger than myself, and that's how we stay connected to what our original good intentions are, because hopefully our intentions are God breathed, Yep. So I really liked that line in that conversation between Maya and Pepper. Any other thoughts as we about Iron Man 3?
Just sort of a fun thing.
Yeah.
Ellen Brandt is that AIM agent that Tony Stark fights in the bar. She, in the comics, is married to Ted Sallis, who's the alter ego of Man-Thing.
Interesting.
And they actually mention in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Maria Hill is leaving a congressional hearing in Season 1, Episode 20. And Hill asks Pepper Potts, who or what is a Man-Thing? And so the inclusion of Ellen Brandt as an agent of AIM, sort of stays true to that story. But I don't know that they'll ever bring Man-Thing to the MCU for real. But it's just interesting that that's kind of like one of those side things. It's a nod to the fans.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I wonder, I've wondered, because I feel like there's a couple, maybe I'm just thinking of those two. It feels like there's a couple nods to Man-Thing, and there's no part of me that believes they're actually going to bring Man-Thing into the MCU. But I do think that's, Marvel does a lot of really fun things like that sometimes, just to remind the fans that, we remember these characters.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see for Infinity War what all they bring to the table, because they may have given nods to certain characters and then may use those guys as kind of one-offs for them. Yeah, that's true. And again, with the way that the MCU is expanding kind of rapidly, there's always going to be kind of options for bringing in characters and doing fun things with them. So that's kind of cool. I did have one more thing that I wanted to say. So, not in quite the same way that Justin Hammer is, but Aldrich Killian is also kind of a Tony Stark-esque character in that because he starts out kind of nerdy and deformed, and then he becomes smooth, suave businessman who is clearly trying to seduce Pepper. In fact, I think they said that in the original script there actually is a sex scene between the two of them, and I'm glad that didn't happen, because that would have been awful for lots of reasons. Yeah, I think he is still kind of a, I think we're still kind of getting foils for Tony that kind of put a dark mirror up to who Tony is. Right.
And I think whether it's Maya, whether it's Aldrich Killian, whether it's Justin Hammer, whether it's Obadiah Stane, I think we still get Tony being shown all of the ways that people like him, genius like his, can be exploited for evil and malevolent purposes. So I thought about that a little bit. Again, I think one thing that I will never fault Marvel for, I think Guy Pearce did a great job in the role. And I like Guy Pearce as an actor when he's a bad guy. I don't ever really want to see one of my least favorite movies ever is a movie called The Time Machine, and it came out in like I think either late '90s, early 2000s, and I think one of the it's a terrible story and it's terribly executed, but I also think part of what makes it bad is that Guy Pearce is the good guy. So I just don't ever want to see him as a good guy.
So keep him as a villain.
Keep him as a villain, and everything will go fine.
That's funny. Well, this so we talked about Guardians.
Yeah.
It came out May 5th, and it's a busy summer because Spider-Man Homecoming's coming out, and the Defenders. Spider-Man Homecoming comes out July 7th, and then Defenders comes out in August.
Yeah.
So it's very exciting.
It's going to be a good summer. I'm excited. A lot of good projects coming up, and I'm really interested in seeing. Hi. I'm really just for those of you who Zane's daughter just kind of showed up on the scene. Those are buttons.
Watching TV.
But I think we're gonna have a really cool summer full of Marvel goodness, and we're as we're going through the summer, we're gonna be looking at Phase 2 of the MCU, and really kind of the beginning of a big expansion of the MCU as we get watch this world kind of expand. And again, kind of, we're going to see this relationship between Tony Stark and Peter Parker in Spider-Man Homecoming. So I'm really interested in seeing how we continue to see the evolution of Tony Stark as the MCU continues.
Yeah. Did we decide how we're going to do this watching-wise from this point?
So I think I'm gonna revisit the chronology. I think what I'd like to do is to jump into the first handful of episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and see if we can go chronologically as much as possible with the phases.
Right.
So.
I mean, obviously, so. Agent Carter.
Yeah, clearly we've already destroyed our chronology. Yeah, good point. But
I mean,
at least moving through the phases in a somewhat chronological order.
Right.
So
okay, great.
Yeah. So with that, I think we'll call it a day. You definitely have people vying for your attention. Until next time, you can follow us. On Twitter, I'm at Derek L. Weston. He's at Zany Sanders. And our Twitter is, remind me?
At Marvel_Gospel.
Yeah. And there's also a Facebook group, Gospel According to Marvel, is on Facebook, so you can join in some conversations. We'll try and put some more things up. Did you put your ranking on the page?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, cool. And I will try and get my ranking up soon as well.
All right.
So until next time, we'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye, guys. Thanks.